Excellent. Before I open it up to questions from my colleagues, I just wanted to make sure on page 12 of the agenda, some advocate concerns are referenced, and it's my understanding that the advocates and the department acknowledge that there's ongoing discussion regarding this matter.
Yes.
But if you could elaborate a little on question 3, which is if indeed it's anticipated that the department will utilize all of the federal Social Security cost reimbursement funds to fund the 31 positions until fiscal year 1920. What is your contingency plan if the estimated cost reimbursements are lower than projected?
Well, I'll start that conversation. We have a commitment to funding the ILCs at $12.5 million. And that commitment does not change, as you know, it's set in the budget. Obviously, as I mentioned before, this is requesting the authority, not funding. So we have, as an organization of the department, responsibility to manage those resources. And we're certainly going to be doing that to ensure that, you know, as this program rolls out, that it's funding itself. We are not looking to reduce the commitment that we have to the independent living community.
Thank you. I think it was important for you to actually state that on record, given the size of the audience here. Senator Monning, and then we'll, after members ask their questions, and I'll open it up to Finance and LAO. Senator Monning.
Great. Well, thank you. I want to thank the panel for your work and helping to inform us this morning. I do want to kind of follow up. The chair alluded to it in the questions. Can any of these work incentive planner positions, are people currently working in independent living centers eligible to be qualified to fill any of those positions?
So there's two things to that. First of all, the position that we use for this classification is an open position, and the short version of a complicated answer is that individuals who are qualified to be staff services analysts within the state of California can go take the test now, get their eligibility as soon as they push send, and apply for a job tomorrow morning. To the extent that any of those providers out there are interested, they certainly would be eligible, and given any experience they have, as Molly described, would be a very compelling candidate.
And then if they were a successful candidate, could they provide that service through the existing independent living center where they are working?
The benefits that what we're talking about here is integrating this service into the ongoing vocational rehabilitation caseload. That's the change here. So it's not a matter of creating a transactional service, much like if I went to the doctor and the doctor said, hey, you have this issue, I need to send you over to that specialist or that specialist. This is a consumer, either consumers show up and I'm having that engaged conversation with the team right there on the spot, and it's repetitive, it's reoccurring. So one of the things that we're learning is that this is not a one-time, it's not a transactional conversation, it's reoccurring. And the pilot demonstrates that that reoccurring integrated conversation has dramatic results.
I appreciate that, but again, it sounds like to the extent there's a relationship between an existing center and a consumer, that you build on that relationship and you have that repetitive ability to follow up. But I think related to that, let me just ask another question. As I look at the projected deployment at page 10 of the agenda of the 31 positions, I wonder how those decisions are made. I don't see the Central Coast, which I represent. The closest site would be San Jose, but that's for consumers in San Luis Obispo County, Monterey County, Santa Cruz County. That's not a very attainable location to access services. How do you propose to extend these services to all consumers, not just those clustered in these areas?
So the San Jose district does cover all of that. The San Luis Obispo County comes out of our Santa Barbara district, but our San Jose district does cover Santa Clara, Monterey, Santa Cruz counties. One thing that I did not mention yet is, in addition, you know, as I mentioned, we have 40,000 individuals in our caseload. There's 1.7 million in California, so you know there's plenty of work here. The Social Security Administration has published a notice inviting proposals to continue providing that service. And as if I'm recalling correctly from the notice, they're funding that for the next 5 years, so that goes out through 2020. So we obviously recognize that, this is going to make a significant impact, but it certainly doesn't cover all of the demand that's there, and we'll certainly be partnering with whoever receives the SSA planning grants to provide that service in addition as well.
Great, thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Senator Stone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see that in an empire, you've got 3 positions, which I greatly appreciate. In looking at Los Angeles, which of course has got more population, you're looking at the geographical areas, which I greatly appreciate. San Bernardino being the largest county, I think, pretty much in the country, and Riverside County being the 4th largest geographically in the state of California. And Molly, I didn't get your last name, so I'm sorry to call you by your first name, but thank you for your personal story about Shauna. And I know that when you meet with these youngsters, that you're hearing about their fears. Well, I'm afraid to get out of the system I'm in because I've got to maintain my living standards. What tools do you need from the legislature to give assurances to people that want to be independent without the fear of losing benefits and being able to quickly get back into a system? What can we do in the legislature to give you the tools to assure them that they can take a risk and go out and get a job and see how they do without the fear of not being able to get back into the system?
Well, I'll mention at least 2 things. One is, of course, we just certainly appreciate your support on the proposal that's before you.
Yes.
We think that goes a long way. We certainly would invite your voice on the conversation with our communities broadly, including our employers, because what we have not talked about is the individuals actually securing employment. That's the end result. I mean, that's the key to the independence. That's the key to moving off of Social Security. So any voice that you can share, lend, bring to the conversation, so that when an individual with a disability shows up to the employer's door, that they're ready, willing, and able to say, yeah, I see Joe, he's a blind guy, I'm willing to give him a job. And that can go a very long way. So we appreciate any voice that can be given to that effort.
But isn't it fair to say that, understanding what we believe to be one's skill sets and the reality of what their skill sets are, that they may be going into an environment that may be a little bit more challenging for them to begin with. And there may not be another job that might be more appropriate for them that they can get into at that time. My concern is that they've tried, realize it might be more than they can deal with at the time. How can I get them back into ensuring that they feel comfortable they're going to get the benefits back again until we can try the next level of a job?
Yes, and as Molly described, there's that preservation, the ability to get back into the Social Security is one thing. One other aspect of the work that we do is our employment coordinators and our counselors. And we work very hard with our consumers that we serve to make sure that there's an appropriate job match. But not only just the match, then when the individuals are placed into the jobs, to provide the necessary supports both to the consumer so that they can do the functions of the job, but also working with the employer. And we do that quite a bit through our employment coordinators, and we have a centralized workforce development section that works with the employers to make sure that both the needs of the employer and the consumer are addressed, so that it is a job match that works.
In the Welfare to Work program, we have incentives for employers that take on people that are going from welfare to work, subsidizing basically their salaries for a finite period of time. Is there any programs like this, federally funded, state funded, that gives incentives to employers to embrace the disabled communities?
I believe there are some incentives for employers for hiring individuals with disabilities, but frankly, I'm sorry, I'm a little foggy on that, the details of that.
Okay.
There's some tax credits, I believe, are available to businesses, employers.
Well, I think we should illuminate that. I don't know who I can ask to get that information, but I would like to get that information. And if we do have that existing program, we need to make employers available to that information. And if we need to augment it, I would certainly be willing to augment it. And I think you may have a buy-in by a number of employers that would like to hire people and give them an opportunity to thrive.
Thank you. We'll certainly get you the information, what we know is available.
Thank you.
Excellent. Senator Monti, anything else? LEO.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Rashi Kasarwani with the Legislative Analyst's Office. Given the ongoing discussions between the department and the advocate community, we think it's appropriate to leave this item open at this time.
Any other comments on the first three items?
No comments on the first three items. Thank you.
Thank you. And finance? Nothing. Okay, perfect. Of those who are lined up, we're going to move to public comment. Is it the entire perimeter of the room, or who's, just by show of hands, who's going to queue up for this testimony? Excellent. I see Mr. London's at the end of the line. I see you. I've asked the sergeants to bring a floor mic, a standing mic, to kind of expedite testimony, so you can queue up and go through quickly. Also, to help those members of the public who are not able to navigate the 2 steps to come up to the podium. We're going to give you 2 minutes, because I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to testify. We've got a long hearing today, and I will give you a 30-second warning. First witness, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Tedessa Favuzzi from the California Foundation for Independent Living Centers, representing 21 ILCs across California. We actually really think that the budget change proposal might have the opportunity to generate funding that could support independent living centers if it's successful. We do, though, have some concerns that it may put our funding at risk, and we do have plans to be talking with the department tomorrow about this concern. We are also quite concerned about the fact that there was a 30% cut in assistive technology services in 2004, and we're really interested in getting that funding restored to the centers. That's less than $1 million. And that we have 3 independent living centers in the state of California that do not receive any California-based funding, and we're very interested in getting those 3 centers into the queue. That's about $700,000. Thirdly, we're very concerned about the TBI services. There are only 7 sites in California. Clearly, their funding is going down rather than up, and the bill that created them sunsets in 2019, and we really, as a community, need to come together and figure out how we're going to provide traumatic brain services, brain injury services in California. We respectfully ask that you keep this item open. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was perfect. That was 1:30. Thank you. You are a trendsetter. Excellent. Next witness, please.
Good morning. My name is Nancy Chance, and I'm normally here on behalf of the folks I work with, who have developmental disabilities. However, today I'm here on behalf of my husband, who suffered a traumatic brain injury 8.5 years ago. I'm finding it much harder to talk about that than my other work. I'm just here to say that we need to expand services to folks with TBI. My husband was working, standing next to his truck, hit by a motorcycle at work, and his entire life changed, as did mine and my children's. And no one's ever talked to us about retraining. And quite frankly, I had a nurse come out to look, to assess him for in-home care, what he needed, attendant care. And the nurse suggested I take him to work with me because, I do this for a living. I mean, that's just unacceptable. There needs to be more services out there for folks with a traumatic brain injury. My husband wants nothing more than to work. We got to find something different for him to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Marty Yamamoto, California Disability Senior Community Action Network. I'm also a family member of a person with developmental disabilities. She passed away several years ago. First of all, I want to show my appreciation to the leadership of the department. I think you are trying to do the right thing. But number 1, and I also agree with the comments made by the California Foundation for Independent Living. I do think there's a solution out there, and I'm confident that the stakeholders work together. But on the issue of TBI, I was on the TBI stakeholder group that was working to get the waiver. And, all of us, including the department, I think, are tremendously disappointed that that did not happen. And the need out there is so tremendously great. I've talked to so many families over the years. These are families that are so desperate because their child received was in an accident, an acquired TBI, after their 18th birthday, which meant that they were not eligible for other types of services through the regional centers. And they felt cut off and totally abandoned. Also because simply there's not a lot of services out there for them. And so this waiver might have been, albeit it was a limited solution, but at least it was moving in the right direction. So, number 3, we need concrete action from the legislature and from the state, not to try, but to get the federal money that is out there for everyone else and use it for expanding services for people with TBI. The money is there. The money is there through Medicaid that we need to be creative about. And I think the department with other stakeholders, including myself, we need to get that money, but it's not try, we need to get the money to help our families. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Catherine Blakemore, Disability Rights California. I want to just thank you for the opportunity to speak on these important issues, to say we're pleased that the department and the independent living centers are working towards a solution, and we support leaving that item open so that conversation can continue. On the TBI front, I would say that this is one of the most underserved disability communities. There is not a comprehensive way of providing services. We were the sponsor of the bill that authorized getting a waiver and are extraordinarily disappointed that's not going forward. We can do better as a state. None of the existing waivers, according to the department's information, fully provide the array of services that a person with traumatic brain injury needs. So there is a need for a more specialized waiver, and if there's some complication with that, then I would encourage looking at a 1915I state plan amendment, which is what the Department of Developmental Centers did last year to bring in additional funding, Medicaid funding, to serve individuals with DD. And then finally, I would note one of the difficulties with the current RFP around the TBI centers is it's based on the penalty fund, which is a decreasing amount of money. So again, we're sort of putting a Band-Aid on something and need a much more comprehensive approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Will Sanford, Futures Explored. I rise in support of the TBI comments that have already been made. I'd like to chat briefly on the promise grant of making sure that as we go into the adult world, we're doing lots of education of our young individuals as they hit the adult world. Our transition numbers are very poor of them staying in employment because we don't fund well the employment services that provide that support. So put in that plug, and I also rise in support, obviously, of anything that helps in the benefits planning. We know that only 1% of people get off SSI who get on it. It is probably the largest barrier for folks with especially intellectual disabilities of going into employment. The fear of losing their medical benefits is more so than the cash grant, but that fear is enormous and very powerful disincentive for people to go into employment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Eric Zigman, and I'm the CEO of the Pomeroy Rehabilitation Recreation Center in San Francisco. We were one of the 7 TBI demonstration sites and have been since 2002. In addition, we fundraise for a small additional TBI, ABI, acquired brain injury program. And I want to add my voice, of course, to all of those who have spoken on the human need for this underserved population. The notes in the agenda talk about awards will be given this year based on funds available, which I know is a common term, but it does make us nervous about the reduction in the funds and the need for ongoing funds. So I want to add my voice to the committee's concerns about finding a source going forward. And then I just wanted to end, we're going to spend the next maybe 6 hours talking about developmental disabilities services, which we do. And so when you look at the agenda also, it looks like we spent about $1,300 in the demonstration sites per person per year, and we're going to be talking about $500,000 per person per year in the developmental centers and maybe $18,000 for all the 280,000 people we serve in the community with developmental disabilities. So it just highlights this need in this population, and I've worked with folks who've had traumatic brain injuries the day before their 18th birthday or the week before, and they're in our system for a lifetime of services, but the day after, if their traumatic brain injury occurs, they're really, at the mercy of sort of sketchy funding. So please try to protect the TBI services.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Madam Chair and members, Rick Rollins here on behalf of the Brain Injury Association of California. We'd like to add our voice to supporting all the previous comments, and again, very, very concerned about this downward trend in funding through the penalty fund. this system needs increased ongoing funding, and we're at a critical stage, and I hope that you'll support that, that movement forward.
Thank you, sir. Next witness.
Good morning. My name is Katie Shinoda. I'm from Mercy General Hospital's Home and Community Reintegration for Traumatic Brain Injury Survivors. I'm also representing the Traumatic Brain Injury Services of California, the 7 grant sites that are currently existing and working with the department. On behalf of all of those sites, I wanted to express our concern about the decreasing funding for traumatic brain injury services. I would like to request that this item be left open to allow more time and more work to be done to pursue more sustainable funding for the traumatic brain injury programs. The data around traumatic brain injury is there's an increasing incidence in traumatic brain injury, and there is a decrease in the death rate from traumatic brain injury. So there are many, many more survivors who need much more comprehensive services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Hello, I'm Dan Clark. I'm a community member. I'm a retired person from the Department of Rehab. I was a vocational counselor, and I was also overseeing the TBI program before I retired. So I want to speak to 2 things. One is I want to support the department in its effort to get the benefits planner as a vocational counselor. It pays the dividends, and it's a good program. So I really want to give them kudos for going out to do this. Secondly, from the TBI perspective, I also want to give them kudos for trying to help stopgap in this declining funding we're getting. Last year, they got $500,000, but it's still going to be dwindling. We know it's going down. And these services, as you are hearing, are needed out there. And I've seen it firsthand, and I've heard it. I saw it when I was overseeing the program. It's an area that is really fragmented, and it needs to be out there. So I want to ask you to keep it open to see what we can do to get some stabilized funding in this program. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next witness.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senators, my name is David DeLeonardis. As the Vice Chair of the State Rehabilitation Council, I support the Department of Rehabilitation's request for an augmentation. You've already heard the statistics. You know the unemployment rate among persons with disabilities. Recently, in August, I retired after a 34-year career providing employment services to persons with significant disabilities. Consistently during those 34 years, the largest barrier for a person going back to work was the fear of losing Social Security and the benefits that came with that. Over a 34-year period, that's what I heard consistently. Not the disability, the fear of losing Social Security. Today, Social Security is different. You can get a job without losing your benefits. You can retain your medical benefits, and you can retain your eligibility for Social Security. Still, fear and ignorance of the new laws among not only individuals with disabilities, but also professional service providers still pose a barrier to working. In a statewide consumer satisfaction survey and public hearings conducted by the Department of Rehabilitation and the Council, many consumers continue to state that the fear of losing benefits is a primary reason for not seeking employment. In 2013, the department conducted a pilot study of the effectiveness of providing work incentives and benefits counseling services. Their conclusion at the end of this pilot was that work incentives and benefits counseling proved effective. And this is supported in other venues up and down the state and across the county. This is a newsletter from the Alameda County Behavioral Health. Benefits counseling helps people make informed decisions about jobs.
10 seconds.
I used to be, as the CEO of the organization, I mean, we were an employer of persons with disabilities. I had operations in 3 states. We employed nearly 200 individuals with significant disabilities. One of the problems that I had as an employer was that people wanted to work part-time because they didn't want to lose their benefits. As an employer, it is difficult to accommodate that when you have work to get done. Our organization accommodated it because that was the mission of our organization. If I were a private employer, I likely would not be willing to accommodate requests for part-time employment if it interfered with my operations or my ability to deploy my employees. This is a very important service. I really recommend that you approve this augmentation request.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Next witness.
Madam Chair, members, Carl London here today on behalf of the California Disability Services Association. We're a provider organization of slightly under 100 community-based providers serving people with developmental disabilities and other issues. I did want to laud the department for their work with the Department of Developmental Services, Department of Ed, looking at integrated work setting issues and trying to help all kinds of populations transition into work settings like that are fully integrated. One thing we'd say there, and this gentleman took part of my comment away, is make sure you have employers at the table and also the community-based providers that are going to have to go out and deal with the employers in the community. We do this every single day. There are pragmatic issues that, quite frankly, the departments just miss out on sometimes. The other thing I'd note is that for the developmentally disabled, our population work does still start with this department before it transitions over to the Department of Developmental Services. And just as in that department, we are still all trying to hold supported employment together with 10% less money than we had in 2006-07. You have to restore that and even think about going further with that. On the issue of tax credits and what gets employers in the game, please take a look at AB 1404. I know there's a solution there that's trying to be looked at, the possibility of creating tax credits to help make sure that people with developmental disabilities and others make at least minimum wage, which is something we're all interested in. And that's it. And by the way, Mr. Anderson snuck into line after you had put me as the last person.
That's okay. I didn't say that was into the line. I said 2 minutes, everybody. So, and you all have been stellar.
He just
keep it up.
He just got me back because those were my points as well. So I'll be very fast.
And I didn't say that. No repeated good points. If somebody said it better than you, just say ditto.
I got you. Tony Anderson with the ARC California, also representing United Cerebral Palsy in California. And good morning, Senator Mitchell and members. I will say ditto to the TBI pieces because that's what I had prepared, a very critical area for us. I would add, though, that we do need to spend more time on the prevention area. Drowning prevention is very serious and other traumatic brain injury incidents, helmets, you know it. So that's very critical for all of us. The other piece is that I would just remind the department, and thank the department for their leadership on pursuing the Promise Grant, and remind all of us that only 13% of our population that is working age has a job. And of those people, they're only making about $450. There's a lot to do in this area. Carl gave you the what to watch for, and that's exactly how we feel as well. So thank you for those issues.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Hi, my name is Michael Long, and I am a consumer with minor cases of cerebral palsy. And there's two quick things I'd like to be able to talk about, and that is it's important that you place the 10% increase in the community because we have been taking cuts for the last few years and everything, and I think it's kind of unfair in the situation of, I think the average is the state developmental centers get about $23 an hour and the community gets about $10 an hour. And we need to be able to balance that out a little bit. The second thing is on the SSI issue. Senator leader there talked about how we can be able to be a help to be able to make sure that we have this problem of people being in fear of losing their SSI and everything. And one of the things is that, I don't know if anyone thought of, I'm speaking on the behalf of the profound people with developmental disabilities, and one of the things that could happen is being able to have SSI and work as employees because they pay pay taxes into the system and everything. And so that's how you solve that problem. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.